Hello everyone. Welcome to today's video. My name is Lucas, and today we're going to be talking about color theory, basically about the different things to consider when working with a specific color, what type of color to choose and why you're going to be choosing that color, what other complementary colors can you be using alongside this color, and what are like some main rules that one must follow in order to implement color in their project, right? Because you don't want your project to be very colorful and very tacky. You want the color to play a very important role, but very subtle role in your project, right? So today we're going to be talking about that. So if that is something interesting for you guys, please stick around and let's get started. Now, there's a specific rule that I tend to follow mostly when it comes to web design, right? I'm a web designer, web developer, so I strictly follow these rules always when I'm designing something, when I'm working, right? So usually it's called the 60-30-10 rule, meaning that the 60 is the color that you use the most, right? It's going to be the most consistent color. Usually this is going to be like the fill color of your frame, background of the canvas that you're designing, right? And this color usually tends to be something white or blackish, right? So it has to be a neutral color. In this case, like we said, it's going to be something white or black. So we can just go ahead and make this white. And I'm going to explain to you the different meanings behind each color. But like I said, for the 60 part of it, it should be a neutral color. For the 30 part of it, this is something that this is a color that's a branded color that you will be using a lot in your screens, right? Sometimes when you have a loading screen, for example, you don't want it to be the neutral color, you want it to be like a branded color, right? I'm thinking, for example, Airbnb is something like this pink, reddish color, right? You want this to be something quite not so intense in terms of lightness, but not so neutral, right? You want it to have, let's say if we had like a blue color, let's make this background actually a little bit lighter so you can see. But if we had like a blue brand, we would want this to be like a little bit kind of like a navy blue kind of style, right? So you can barely see the blue, but it's coming. And then for example, this one, this can be something similar to what you have in the navy blue, but it can be lighter than this. It can be real light. And this would be something that you would see like in the button designs, right? So for example, if we were to take this and I were to increase this a little bit, and I would get this and I would make this, be like a certain call to action section, right? And we had like other types of colors that would complement, like something like gray, but very low. You can kind of see I'm just drawing squares here, but it's already looking really nice based off of the different colors that I'm using. And this, for example, being a very small accent over here as well, and maybe over here somewhere another button. But basically we want to basically show these colors very lightly and have this white as a dominant background, right? So this would be kind of what I mean by this, right? So we have these accent colors here, very minimal, and we have the white playing as a big role in the background, and we have this maybe as some type of banner, for example, can work like that. But basically this 60-30, this is playing 60% of the part, this playing about 30%, and this playing 10% or even maybe less. Sometimes maybe the logo would have like a little piece of it as well, right? So yeah, that basically is a 60-30 rule. It's very important to follow. A lot of people tend to use like a background that would be in this color, right? And quite frankly, it is kind of hard for the eye with such a bright color as an accent as a background. You can obviously do it, it's your choice, you're as a designer, but it's not a very nice thing for the eye. And plus you would be using a secondary color as a call to action, and the call to action wouldn't be as bright or as standing out as the actual background of the project. So it's best to just keep this simple with a neutral background, just like I'm showing right here. This obviously looks kind of you know, exciting, maybe for a new designer trying to make something new with cool colors, but the reality is making things neutral with a white background or with a dark background. You can make a dark mode, for example. A dark mode would actually fit really nice with something in this color, like the secondary color. So you can choose something like this and use this, for example, as a white, for example, or not as a white, sorry, as a little bit darker version of this, another shade. And I'm going to go more into detail about how we would choose these things, but basically this is another example. So you can make like a white mode like this and a dark mode like this, and these call to actions can be, they can remain this blue color, but they can also be a mix of both, right? So this is basically a good example of what I would mean with this, right? So now that we got a good understanding of this 60-30-10 rule, so that this is for me the most important thing that I keep in mind always. I don't want to go all crazy with colors. I just want to use this little 10% as an accent, just to show that it is part of the brand. But just keep this neutral. Now that we know this, we can go ahead and we can just get a little square here. And I'm going to go through this fill section over here. So right now we have this white box, and let's give it a little bit of a style so it's not so boring. We give it a little drop shadow, why not? So we have this little white box, curvy little white box, and this white box has no color. So right now we are on this particular fill page. For you, if you're just starting, you'll probably be empty here. But what we have here basically is a square with hues, right? Hues is a specific way of calling like a specific color area, right? So right now the hue is set here, up here to the left. If I were to move it to the right, this is basically the brightest hue that you can find on the map in the specific section, right? So this is the red, and you can bring it to the orange, and this is going to be the brightest orange. And I'm basically moving the hue right now. So this is going to be, this section is the brightest part of this particular hue. So this particular hue is this lime green. Then we can move to the green and just make this a little bit larger. So this always on the top right is the brightest. And naturally, if you go to the bottom, it's going to get darker, right? So this is from bright to dark. Now, that's the first concept. This is the lighting, right? The lighting from light to dark. And then there's a second concept. And the second concept is going from left to right. And that's saturation. So basically, if I were to hold this and go closer to the white, it would be a saturated brightness. See, it's very bright, but it's very bright, but it's kind of milky, right? Because it's saturated. So if I were to put it in the middle like this, and I were to, go like this, bring it here, it's kind of like this ugly blue, like this, swampy blue, however you want to call it. It's because of the saturation. And if I go all the way to the left, it's gray. It's completely, saturated, right? So like this, and like this, right? And the same with this. So every time you go on the left, it gets a little bit more saturated. Now, with these colors, as you can see, I did this specifically. I took this in mind while I chose the 60-30-10. The 60, let me just take a screenshot of everything. So this particular one is all the way on the top left, right? Then this one is a little bit more left aligned, left in the left part of the hue, right? And this one is at the very top. It's very bright, but it's not so left. It's a little bit more towards the right than this one. And that's because I want to make a nice transition from being neutral to having a bright color, right? I want to have a nice transition here that is not so hard. And that means that I need something in the middle that is going to meet me halfway between these two, right? So we have white, we have this navy blue, and then we have this blue. And then, for example, this blue, it would also look pretty good if we were to make it a little bit brighter, right? We can make it a little bit brighter, but not too bright. I'm not a big fan of too bright. But something like this would be good. We can also make it like dark. It's also interesting, but let's not mind that for now. So I want to basically make a nice transition, and this transition point here is this secondary color, right? This secondary color right here. So I'm just going to write here, secondary. So the secondary color has to be a midway point between this brightness and this neutral, all the way saturated, right? So that's saturation for you. So here it's brightness, saturated, brightness. Now another thing that is quite useful is gradients, right? So we have this fill up here, and we have gradients. So if I were to click gradients, you can kind of see here that we can move around a specific gradient. You can make this part on the bottom left lighter, and here on the top brighter. And I always like to organize my gradients that they're always in the same kind of direction. What does that mean? That if I had a button here and I had a button here, I wanted kind of to show that the light is coming from the screen. So what does that mean? Either the gradient is going down, or it's very down like this, for example. So you can see there's like a little bit of a gradient here, and the light is coming from above, right? So gradients is one way of doing it. You can add gradients to buttons. For example, you can add gradients to backgrounds. So if I had this background, a white background with some, let's put some black text. With some black text and a little description going on with some buttons. This would be the description text, and then here a particular button. Boom. Let's make it this color. Let me make this look better actually. We just need one. Bingo. We just need now we need like some type of background gradient. So what we can do is we can choose this, and we can add a gradient with this. Add some type of gradient that plays with the background and make it even, less. We can also add colors on top, stack colors on top of each other. So it can be like this, and this gradient can be a little bit less of an overlay. If it was completely 100%, it would look like this, but we can make it like 20%, so it's kind of like a silver tone to it, right? So let me just organize this for you now. So this would be called gradients, for example. So these would be gradients. And you can also use gradients very nicely with images, right? So if I were to remove this gradient from here, I were to draw a little rectangle representing an image, we can even use some type of this would be an image, for example. Now what I can do is I can bring this linear gradient, bring it to the top, and I want it to mix nicely with this background. So I'm going to make this white as well. I'm going to make this 0, and I'm going to make this completely go like this. And we can make sure that it's going over the text. And so there's a nice little transition between the frame and the image, right? So this is another good way of adding gradients to your project, right? I want to talk to you a little bit about the different types of color coding that we have here and color groups, right? So primarily you would have hex code, because hex code is the thing that, you know, web designers and web developers work with the most. I know a lot of them by heart right now after a few years of working as a web designer slash developer. But basically there are different types of codes. There's hex codes that are with 6 characters long, and the F stands for like this top section up here. And if we were to go to the bottom, it would be a 0, right? 0, 0, 0, and then an increment into the final 9, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, right? So hex code is like the main thing that you work with. If you work also with developers, there's also RGB. So for example, RGB, if you were to increase this, it would change the hue. This, if we were to bring this back to 0, it would go back to the red. And then if you were to decrease this, it would decrease the darkness. And if you were to increase this, it would bring you back the other side of the hue, right? So that's the RGB. And then we have CSS, which, yeah, you would need if you, for example, work with something like Webflow. I'd never use this, for example. HSL I also don't use. I use HSB sometimes, because HSB, for example, if you were to, you can easily navigate through a specific color. So for example, this is the red, and you can easily create groups, right? So these are like different color groups, a monochrome color group, for example. So if I were to duplicate this 4 more times, so like so, I can go like this, select this, go down once, here, select this again, go down to 80, then to 70, and then to 60. Oh, not 60%, sorry, excuse me, here, 60. You can even do it a little bit more extreme. So if I were to just grab this, we can go, instead of by 10s, we can go by 20s. So it would look like this. And this would be kind of what you would call a monochrome color group, right? So this is a monochrome. And this can be easily done with this particular HSB color coding. And if you were to select this again, and I were to duplicate this, let's check out to see what they have in the other side. So here, instead of going downwards, here you basically, it also says saturation, brightness, saturation, and hue. So I can go 2 steps downwards, and again 2 steps downwards, and again 2 steps downwards, and it would look like this. And I can also do the same here. Let's just go 2 steps more towards black and 2 steps more towards gray. You can already see kind of how it would basically look like, right? Now if I were to select this and go the other way, so basically I would go like this and go 20 with the hue, it would basically select hues in the same particular area, but like in the same location, basically, but with a different hue, right? So that means that they're going to be different colors at the end of the day. So this is going to be more purple, and then we're going to have more towards blue, and then so on and so forth. More towards blue, and then it's going to go towards green. And you can do the same thing with this. So for example, if I were to go like this, I can just lower this like this, lower this like this, so on and so forth. So you kind of get the idea of how to do this. And what does that mean? So let's say that you select, because you might think, okay, cool, I know how to, I understand kind of the basics, but so what, right? Well, so what? Let's see. Let's say that you want to use this type of reddish pink. I kind of like it. It's kind of like the Airbnb style. So what you can do is you can create different styles off of this. So you can mood board kind of. So I'm going to create something that's a little bit darker, go down by 30, sorry. So we got something like this going on. And now I want to see what colors complement with this one. So if I were to go like this, I can see that this color, this type of yellow, kind of complements pretty well with this type of red, right? And I can say the same with this. So for example, this would be in this 58. So if we were to go here and click on 58, they kind of complement the same. Or you can also switch this around, and this would complement this in a way, or this would complement this. Right? So basically you're just looking for colors that complement each other. And I kind of know automatically how they would complement each other, but there's different ways using this Hues circle of finding out how they would complement each other. Let me break this down for you so you kind of have a good understanding. So we spoke a little bit about monochrome over here, that these are monochrome over here. And let me just separate this from there because this is not really monochrome. But basically monochrome would look like this. But we have other types of color styles, right? And one of them is called analog. So if I were to go here and draw a line towards the middle, and then draw a line just holding down shift, and then again go like this, boom. Let's say that each one has a circle containing the color that would be at the very tip, right? So this would be, if I were to select this and hold I can get the color picker and kind of see what color is here. This type of color group, basically you can use it and move it around the entire circle, and you will always find complementary colors, right? So for example, these three would complement each other because it's an analog type of style. But if I were to do this and I were to rotate this around in a specific way, maybe like this, put this in the middle, and I would do the same and get these styles. So if I were to bring this here and get this looking like this, and this over here looking like this, and again this over here, wherever this is, these three would complement each other. So we can just group them like this, sorry, and they would have a nice fit with each other, a nice natural fit, right? So we have like this dark bluish with this blue and this green blue, and then we have these that fit nice with each other. So basically what I'm trying to say is that no matter where you go in this wheel, you will have colors that complement each other's, and that's called basically the analog. Now the next thing is called complementary color group. So we saw this is the analog color group. And let's just put these here as an example. Whoops. And let's get this, let's copy this. And let's bring this down. Let's call this the analog So let's just put this up here, analog, and this would be complementary, right? And complementary, what it is, let's just delete this particular line, and we just get the color. We can rotate this like however we want. Let's just put this here, and let's put this right in the middle. And what we got to do is just flip this around and flip it so that it's completely opposite. I guess like this, sorry, completely opposite. And let's get one of our good old circles, boom, and we just get this color, and we get this color, and these complement with each other. And you can do this from all around the circle and basically group these things, and they will always be a nice color to find. And this is basically something similar to what we did here, right? So we kind of moved everything around, and these don't really look nice with each other, right? But then if you go here, it's starting to look good, right? So this is kind of like a similar type of style. And if I were to rotate this again, we have these two over here, and I can just go like this, and same here, and these complement each other really nice. So this is complement. Then there's something called the triadic color groups, which you basically get this, and you would basically create like a little triangle from this. So if I were to get this, go like this, yeah, it's looking good. And then bring this one up here, flip this, and fit it to be as a perfect little nuclear symbol. You can say, we can just copy these, and these color codes would also be complementary with each other based on the position that they are in this hue circle, right? So it would be this red, purple, and green, and you can basically flip this around everywhere, and these would be perfectly matched. So if I were to go like this and move this around like this, we can do basically the same thing going like this. I'd have to pick the last one. Perfect. Going over here, picking this, and going down here, picking this aqua blue, and it would basically be a good fit with each other, right? So yeah, that's basically it with the color group. And there are certain websites like Coolors that are great places to search for inspiring color combinations. So like, for example, something like this looks pretty nice. This one as a neutral color, for example, looks great. And this as like this one as a secondary color would look amazing. And probably this one as a accent color. So you can probably screenshot this, bring this over here, bring this down here, and you can basically paste these into your project. And for example, bring these into your wireframes. And let's say like this is a wireframe. Let's just put it like that. We can basically change these secondary colors to be more like this. We can make this look like this, and we can make these accent colors be this yellow. And you can already start seeing that there's a really nice design coming up based off of these different shades, right? So this can be one example, or you can make this like this, this like this, and so on and so forth, right? So Coolors is a great way of doing it. You have a lot of different inspirations, and you can basically copy their hex codes like this. You can save them to view later. Another great way of doing it is looking at different tools like Airbnb, for example. Airbnb is a great example of beautiful design. You can see that they have a primary white everywhere, and their accent is this color. and their secondary color would probably be like a gray, or I don't even see a big secondary color. It's mostly white, and probably this map color would be considered, or this gray would be considered a secondary color, but mostly it's this white minimalistic coloring for Airbnb. But looking at websites and basically going to inspect, and you can kind of see what colors they're using by just going like this and selecting a specific layer, and kind of viewing here what color codes they're using. You can copy that, right? So for example, they have here their different color codes, so you can basically just copy this hex code and kind of see how to integrate that into your project, right? So I hope this quick little tutorial was useful for y'all in terms of knowing how to use colors. Don't be too crazy with them. Just use a neutral background and use colors very minimal. You know how to work with them. There's the color pick tool. There's the HSB to play around with the shades. Don't choose colors that are very different from another. Use these different rules with the grouping and you'll be fine. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them down in the comments below. If you have any more input in terms of coloring, I'd also love to hear it. And other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.